Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Going Dark podcast. As you can see, it's a little different. Tyler usually opens it up for us. T-Dog could not be here today. My man is taking care of some stuff, but welcome everybody to episode 29 with a special guest. This is Stanley 557, man. How's it going? How are you doing?
Doing good, dude. Hello there, fellow zombie slayers. My name is Stanley 557.
Yeah, listen, so Tyler can't be here today, but we're going to carry him on in spirit. Just leave a like for my boy. I mean, he's coming back, chat. You know, he's taking care of some things right now, but he will be on the next episode. But since he's not here today, this kind of gives us free reign to yap a little more in depth about zombies than we otherwise would. And I think there's probably no better pick right now in the zombies community to yap about everything Black Ops 6 than Stanley himself. The other thing is that we just had the release of Black Ops 6 DLC 2, The Tomb, and that has, I think, put some shockwaves in the community a little bit. So I'm sure we can get into that as well. We'll talk about the reception to The Tomb and all of that. But first, I want to ask you, because I don't think we've ever properly spoken before. I don't think we've ever been able to sit down and just talk. So I want to know, a little bit about you, man. I want to know how you got here and how you got interested in YouTube a little bit, and if you can walk us through how you got into zombies and all that and how you ended up here.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, absolute pleasure to be on the show. But I grew up basically watching anyone play zombies. It was my older brother, it was fellow YouTubers, it was other people that make content on it. It was everyone but me. I sucked at the game. And the only thing I knew how to do was the Easter eggs. And I could direct people through them, but I could not survive for crap. And then one day I decided that I wanted to make my own videos. It was something that always interested me, being able to talk about zombies, being able to share a very big passion that I have for it. And it's really inspired me to get better at the game, to learn the game better. And I'm really proud with how far I've come with it. It's something that engages me every day. I get excited to make videos. I get excited to interact with the community. And it's something that's very special to me.
Mm-hmm. So you just mentioned that something that kind of raised my ear was that you said that you got into zombies, you knew how to do all the Easter eggs and stuff, but you were not good at the actual game. That's very different. I feel like, where a lot of people are yeah, I can play the game a little bit, but I don't know shit about Easter eggs, or I don't know any of that other crazy stuff. I feel like it's very inverse of the typical COD player. So do you think that came from a lot of were you just more interested in watching people play, and so you absorbed all of these Easter egg steps and how to do these quests, but you didn't really put the pen to paper yourself a whole lot?
100%, yeah. I was the biggest split screen little brother, so I sucked
Nice,
at it.
man.
And whenever my older brother he'd be like, I'm gonna play myself now, I would just watch videos on it. I would watch him on it. I would watch Dalek make storyline videos back in the day. And whenever I would play with him, I would look up the Easter egg steps for him. Like, we'd play Origins. I was 12 at the time. And the only thing I knew how to do was, all right, we need to do this. We need to throw the G strike at the stone. I'm not gonna do it, but that's what you have to do.
So you got introduced by your older brother then, hey?
Yes, I was 10 when Black Ops 1 came out. That was my first actual exposure to zombies.
Gotcha. I think you and I are essentially around the same age then. That's very interesting. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So when did you make your YouTube channel? What game would that have been?
Yeah, I made it around in 2018 around Black Ops 4.
Okay.
And I was super excited for Chaos and 9 and Voyage, and I wanted to make something that felt like it was me. I wasn't seeing videos at the time that I wanted to see. So it felt like I wanted to take that into my own hands. And I feel like a lot of the things that I have made feel like they have my voice in them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something I'm very proud of.
What were those videos that you felt like you wanted to see that weren't being made?
Probably one of the biggest ones was full, up and back then, it was full in-depth guides, things that were just me going on and on about every little nook and cranny and giving everything a fair shot. It wasn't just oh, I don't like this, I'm not going to talk about this map. Oh, I think this map is terrible, we can skip over it. Or this is Burger Town, that's the whole joke.
Sure.
It was actually looking into all of these games and taking a real deep dive into what works about it, what doesn't work about it, and giving everything a fair analysis piece by piece.
I see. No, I think there is always a lot of room for that kind of conversation in the zombies community. It seems like you had a unique enough voice to garner an audience for that. I think that's incredible.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does your older brother still play zombies by any chance?
No, he fell out of it around between Black Ops 3 and Black Ops 4. So around that time is when I really picked up the pieces and ran with it.
Man, there's this weird thing that maybe I'm a little biased towards this, but it's a pattern that I see a lot where it's like specifically in the zombies community, it's the people that are still playing now are usually not the people that like natively started with it, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
I kind of have a similar experience, but not with an older brother. It was with a neighborhood friend. I didn't even have my own game console. We grew up with, not really a whole lot of money, and like I didn't have a console until I was well into my teenage years. So the only games I could play would be at friends' house. And so one of my friends owned World at War and everything, and that's how I got started on zombies. But I find it interesting that pretty much anybody who's still, not everybody, but a lot of people who are still actively playing zombies now, they have a story where they're like, my older brother introduced me to it, or my friend or my cousin introduced me to it, right? And it's like that person that introduced it to them 9 times out of 10 isn't really still actively playing the game, but the person that got introduced to it is. I don't know what to make of that. I think it's interesting.
Yeah. I think that like that passing of the guard was just at the point where the people that got into it more or less loved it for the simplicity of it, whereas when you and I got into it more or less, it was like we loved more the complexity of it. So watching it grow is what kept us going with it. And I think that keeps us with it longer than people who just wanted it simple back in the day.
So that can lead a little bit nicely into what I want to talk about next. So you are infamous, I suppose, for having some hot takes that people on Twitter do not like to hear occasionally, right?
Oh,
I mean,
the
everybody
good
does.
people on YouTube and Twitter.
Yeah, listen, like chronically online Twitter users, sometimes they got a problem with certain zombie takes. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on the Tomb, and I want to know a little bit of your thoughts on the reaction to the Tomb specifically from the community. If it's a little bit overblown, if it's on the money, like we can delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, I will say real quick aside though with some of my hot takes from Milo's podcast, the big one being I was more interested in Weaver than Richtofen. I've been disappointed by BO6. So far the haters have proven me right on that. So I hope that
can you elaborate on that, what you thought, what that meant a little bit? Like, I think I know what you're getting at, and it sounds like it sounds like a crazy tweet, right? But I kind of think I know what you're getting. If you can maybe explain to the audience like what you meant by that.
I felt like Richtofen had his story told, and I'm not saying that I don't want him in BO6. I think it's interesting they're pulling a whole new angle with him, but I felt like that his story was told, and I was after reading Cold War's intel, after being so invested in that game, I was really engaged to see where they were going to take Weaver. He was the one that stuck out to me the most in that game, and I felt like they had repurposed him from campaign in such an interesting way, where he's so multifaceted and nuanced that I was so interested to see where it was going.
You're saying that like Weaver just had more potential to
more
grow and
yes,
do new cool things in the zombie storyline that hadn't been done before, type thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's completely fair. I do think there is a lot of I don't know if I love the like pulling at the strings of old Ether too much, so I tend to agree. But at the same time, I'm sure we can get into this. So far, BO6 like has not really been what I am looking for story-wise, even though they had a promising start, I think, like, and there's a lot of reasons for it as well, but it hasn't really culminated into what I would like to see personally. So, if there's nothing else interesting, I'm kind of like, yeah, what the hell is Richtofen doing? Because no one else is doing anything. Everything everyone else did is boring. So it's like, okay, what's Richtofen up to, I guess? But, I'm exaggerating a little bit. But we can talk about the Tomb. What are your thoughts on the map just overall so far?
Yes, a fantastic gameplay experience. I think it's a lot of fun. It's very fast-paced. It's a beautiful environment. It feels super unique to the world that it wanted to create. But I think where pretty much everyone has an issue with, at least I know, the biggest common consensus is the story of it. The narrative, the story, and the outro cutscene. And then also the way it kind of tries to use nostalgia in a way that doesn't really work for a lot of players.
What do you mean by that specifically?
Yes, the way that it tries to pull Origins motifs, it has the ice staff on it. It constantly makes references to the original map without any reason for that stuff to be here. There's a distinct point where you're playing the map and Archibald, when you grab the ice staff, Archibald comments, "It's the fabled ice staff," but it doesn't make any sense because why would they know it's the ice staff?
Yeah.
Yes, we know what that is.
Sure.
But that doesn't really connect narratively. Why do the character, like, why do certain people know what that is?
Yeah, and
I
why would they
think if you're
even
going to
care as
introduce,
well, right?
yeah, why would they care? You have Chaos, for example, being wrapped into this. So why not make it the Scepter of Ra, something that was lost maybe after Ancient Evil? It could be possible to put that in that place instead.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you think
So
it's weird that we
yeah,
had no intro cutscene?
yes, I do, but I get why we didn't, but I wish we did have one. I think that's such a staple of the current way that they present stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
It's almost weird that it wasn't one.
matter of fact, if we don't have loading screens, the one thing that like I've been thinking about a lot that I
Mm.
really miss, dude, that I wish was attached to maps again was like I miss a good loading screen, like a
Mm-hmm.
really
Mm.
good loading screen that you know, you look at these old zombies loading screens and they seem simple on face value, but there's so much compact into them that they're like
Yes.
these infinitely interesting pictures that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they're either setting up a really cool obscure thing in the lore or even like a hint to the next map, and people would analyze these loading screens for days. And I mean, even if we don't have an intro cutscene anymore, I would kind of like a loading screen for the maps again.
I agree. I was recently looking at Moon's like loading screen, and it's so interesting how much that like loading screen makes you theorize. It makes you question it, gets you engaged in the world of it.
Yeah.
You see like a giant Samantha statue on the moon, moon men traveling down the trenches back to Griffin Station. You have the entire left side, which is an old like 50s like crapware
Hmm.
buy, where you just buy random junk.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we don't get that in Modern Zombies, and that would
Yeah.
be really cool to have that back.
I think
It's
it
those little
adds.
touches that go such a long way.
Yeah, I think it adds a lot of personality. So I want to tell you this. I was myth busting last night with Big Codename Pizza, and we were chatting, you
Mm.
know, a little bit, and I was just straight up asking him like, "Yo, so do you think the Tomb is better than Citadel?" He said yes. He thinks the Tomb is a better map than Citadel Day More, and I'm like, honestly, dude, I don't think I agree. I like the Tomb a lot. I think like from a gameplay perspective, I think it's a pretty solid map. I think a lot of my complaints tend to fall in line with what you laid out. My thing is though, I don't think it beats Citadel as far as like a standalone experience, right? I don't know if you feel
Mm.
the same way. Like, do you prefer the Tomb to Citadel, or do you think it's
I
not
think I
quite there?
prefer Citadel more.
Yeah.
At the very least, Citadel had more interesting and cohesive story beats that made a bit more sense, where the Tomb has almost nothing.
Do you find like when it comes to rating a map, do you find story or its gameplay more weighted in your mind? Like
Ooh, that's a good question.
it's tricky,
I
right? Because
almost
both
want
are
to cop
important.
out. I want to cop out and say both of them. Like you can't pick either one or the other. But I think that there is, in my opinion, if I had to pick one,
It's
give me a moment,
hard,
let me think
huh?
about that. It is. It might be story. Like whenever I think, even because gameplay is when I play a map, but story will always be both in map and out of map.
Yeah, and
It's
it's
what I
kind of
think
what
of whenever I
resonates
think of
when you
the
think
game.
about a map.
Yes. How does it
Yeah.
tie the narrative together? How does it tie any emotional stakes to it? A good
Mhm.
map can do good gameplay and a good story. I think I forget who said this. It might have been Afterlife, where a bad story can be saved by good characters. Good characters cannot save a bad. No, no. Good characters can save a bad story, but bad characters can't save a good story.
Yeah, I think that's kind of on the money, honestly. That does make
Mhm.
sense. And to your point, when I think about a lot of zombies maps that resonate with me, I think I'm a little bit on the other side. I think I tend to weight gameplay as the most important, even though I do think story is to some degree important. That's why I think
Mhm.
I think you and I's biggest disagreement will probably be like when it comes to Black Ops 4, because I know you're a pretty big fan of BO4.
Biggest
Me a
fan.
little bit less so, but
Mhm.
I think that's kind of it, right? It's our weightings on maps are a little bit different, and so do you think the community sentiment to the Tomb being like dog water is a little bit overblown?
100%. I have I have gone through development documents. I have gone through what these developers go through on a daily, like I've seen what they go through on like a daily basis. I know the amount of ideas that get cut, the amount of cooks that are in the kitchen. I've seen some of the worst maps that we have ever seen in our entire lives, and I don't think the Tomb is one of those.
No, I don't either. I think it's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's a
It's
fine map.
fine. It falls right in the middle of like there are some pretty big lows, but there are some pretty big highs.
Yeah.
I think it kind of evens itself out. It's not the worst thing in the world.
The thing to consider as well is that eh, when you have any given game and you take a look at its like DLC life cycle, you always have like a low point somewhere. Even BO3, people think is the goat.
Setsubo.
Bro, Zetsubo came out and
Yeah.
the community was at a low,
That
and then
was, yes, such a low.
and even the time between Zetsubo and Garad was like the Great Depression.
Was a nightmare.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
and it just puts that in perspective a little bit. It's like people yearn for the good old days of BO3, but it's like not every day was a good old day back in BO3. Not even
No.
close.
Yes, good days of BO3 were good days, but yes, Shadows was almost attested because a lot of people who played Shadows were original players.
Yep.
BO3 didn't really find its audience until pretty much when the season was over. It found it throughout the year, and once those people stayed, and once the old guard was sifted out, that was when BO3 found its people.
Yeah.
But it took that game, even BO4, IW, Cold War, those games did not find their audiences on the first year.
Sure.
And I think that's telling for Zombies isn't a short-term investment. I think that Activision wants it to be. It's a long-term investment. It resonates with people in a way that other parts of Call of Duty I don't think do sometimes.
Do you think
at least not effectively?
Do you think the problem with BO6 maps to some degree are that they're making the maps for everybody, so to speak? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. That's something that I felt since Cold War, and again, I think it was Afterlife says on Twitter, a game made for everybody is a game made for nobody.
Yeah.
It doesn't have an audience. It doesn't have a theme. It doesn't pull towards something.
I
love what we
agree
have in
with that.
Black Ops 6, but I think it needs to be refined.
There's a sort of
finds footing.
I'm curious what your take on this is, because like Treyarch and everyone there, they were, I've heard it from them firsthand that, hey, they're like, yo, we want to make we want to get the main quest completions up to be as high as possible, right? We want the most amount of people completing main quest. And do you think that that's like almost an inherently flawed strategy? Like if it devalues, well, here's the other part.
Yeah, no, keep going. No, please keep going. Yeah.
I was just gonna say the other part is that kind of makes it complicated is that like they're not really Easter eggs anymore. They are a main quest. They haven't been an Easter egg for quite a long time. And the reason for that is I've actually been thinking about this a lot because I'm working on my script for my big Black Ops 6 review. And I've been thinking about this a lot with zombies. Like the biggest difference between old and modern zombies from a fundamental gameplay perspective is that I'm going to say everything BO3 and before and everything Cold War and after. BO4 is this weird bridge, but everything Cold War and after, like old zombies is at its core a tower defense survival mode in a way where like you are the tower, right? As the player, your job is to use the sandbox to survive as long as possible. That's what the emphasis is on. However, new zombies is like more of an action first person shooter RPG quest-based mode that happens to have survival. And and so I don't I don't know if making the goal having everyone complete Easter eggs is the best approach, but maybe it is for an RPG. Maybe it actually is. So I'm that sorry, that was a lot, but I'm curious what you thought about that.
I do have a couple of lines of thought on that. The first one being is that I've defined it as zombies used to be a resource management action or FPS survival game, and it evolved from BO4 onward into an action adventure.
Yeah,
and that's how I best define it. I think resource management was so intertwined into how early zombies worked.
Yeah,
you really had to balance your ammo, your points, and that was how you saw it. That was your entire decision making basis. Whereas in modern zombies, everything's been streamlined and changed where you can use anything. It's all about how you mow down the hordes, how you have fantastical moments. It's you creating that yourself with the tools in the map, and they try and put those tools on every map so that you have the opportunity to do it anywhere. The difference now being it's the setting and the enemies that you fight, which in Cold War onward started just being the same enemies on every map, which is a whole other issue. The other line of thinking that I have with that is, oh crap, I forgot what the other one was. Doesn't matter. The big thing being is that zombies has become very generalized. Oh, right, the main quest, like trying to make it for everybody. So it is funny that you call BO4 the bridge, because BO4 is when they started calling the main quest officially in the menus. They didn't just call them Easter eggs anymore.
You're right.
Because on BO3 you just get the XP rewards, and they would all be like little, like
just a little blurb about what it was called.
Little blurb, yeah, like mechanized mourning for Gorod Krovi.
Yep.
But Yeah, nowadays I've thought about this a lot. I talked about this with Milo, that they were probably told when Kevin Drew was brought on that, hey, we put a lot of money into your mode. If you want to prove that you can keep it going, you need to prove this so you can get these numbers up. Which is probably why there's such an emphasis on simplifying it, making it replayable, making them short, trying to get people into them. Because statistically, as it turns out, the thing that they spend the most amount of money on, most people don't do. Zombies easily brings in the least amount of cash flow, and it costs the most compared to something like multiplayer or Warzone, which is probably why they're trying to shift their focus to making it more accessible, to making it more replayable, to making it closer to multiplayer. That's why the game is so fast. That's why the game is so high octane. They want to get you in a match and get you right back into it. Because they want to turn zombies into a better return on investment. It does have an audience, and it's something that Activision actively knows that if they make a zombies mode, people will buy the game for it. I bought Modern Warfare 3 and Vanguard, games I would never buy because they have zombies in it. They know that they have my money that way.
Yeah. So
it's why we'll never get a standalone game. But
sure. No. Yeah, you're right. Do you think that still holds true for BO6? Like, obviously zombies traditionally has not pulled in the player count that the other modes were, but like, I don't know, with Warzone being as like disastrous as it is right now and stuff like that, and zombies, even to the outside community, seems like, especially on launch, that it was received very well. Do you still like?
Yes.
I mean, we don't have the numbers in front of us, so I don't know. But do you suspect that zombies is still like that third mode that is not as played as these other ones?
I still think so, but I think the numbers did show they did see a massive improvement compared to other games. We, at the very least, the one number that we do know is the Easter egg number. The Easter eggs were at 4% for Liberty Falls, which I think they said in previous blog posts around like news reports that the highest they ever had was Dean Machine at 5%. And with directed mode, they've jumped it up to 8 or 9%. That shows a marketable increase in people trying to do the main quest, getting engaged in zombies, doing the things that they usually wouldn't do. And Liberty Falls has got a 20-minute quest at best.
That's kind of crazy.
People actually played it. Is, but people played it.
Huh. Directed mode bumping it up, but not even to 10% is that's still kind of crazy.
I think it just kind of shows that I do think that zombies has forever been in the wrong franchise, despite the resources that Call of Duty gives them that they've been able to take advantage of. But I imagine if you pull up the numbers for World War II or IW, those numbers might, and AW, those numbers might be in the floor for how much those quests are done.
Oh,
like, 9% of Liberty Falls is, low. Ugh.
Man, no, I was funny you say that. I was actually I was on my PlayStation today and looking through some trophies. Like, I think, I don't know, it's like the Tortured Path main quest or something like that is like, it's literally like 0.2 or 0.3. It's something like...
Oh, I believe that, yeah. What's it called? Some of the BO4 achievements on Xbox are 0.03%.
My God. Like, they're so low.
Yeah, I mean, that's how much people play zombies, though. I think that there are a lot of people that jump in, and they're trying to make those casual fans hardcore fans. But I think that by trying to make it so generalized, it makes it harder to bridge that gap for some people. Like, I don't know if they're going to go back and play the other games because of BO6 and Cold War.
Yeah, no, that is a good point. Like, ideally, I think they would release a new game that would inspire new zombie players to go back and play all the older classics and stuff. And I don't know, maybe that's happened a little bit. I honestly couldn't tell, but
Zombie Chronicles helped.
Yeah, because Zombie Chronicles was massive for that. That is true. Because that was like quite literally, hey, these are the old classics you may or may not have missed, and people can, play them either in that form or go play them in their original form as well.
And they get engaged. Yeah, some people even say like, oh, dude, I'm going to play some BO1. Oh, I got to buy that game, man. I can only play the Kino on BO3.
Let's
play the original.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think BO6 has done a better job at taking the game like to a little bit more of a, let's say, hardcore level compared to Cold War at least?
Yes, absolutely. I think so. I think the biggest thing is having the time and resources to create unique locations, to create a grander narrative, even if the narrative we'll talk about later, and its quality. But I think that they've done a better job, absolutely. And I think that really is just with time and resources. I think a lot of people undervalue how much it takes to make these games nowadays, how many cooks are in the kitchen when making these games. They don't just, sadly, as much as people like to say they do, they don't just fart these out. They don't take 2 weeks to make the tomb and call it a day. These things are in development for quite a while, especially nowadays.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
But that does not mean it's exempt from any criticism.
No,
whatsoever.
True.
Yes, but that is the point of view that I would like to start the statements with that I want to keep going with.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good like some groundwork to lay. Something I wanted to run by you. You can tell me what you think. This is
Yep.
just a thought I had when I was driving. It was like I was thinking I've been to both the old Treyarch and the new Treyarch studios, and this is kind of a weird
Mm.
like long shot, and I don't know if this sounds kind of crazy, but I'm like
Hit me.
I wonder if like to some degree the environment in which maps are made has any impact on what comes out, because like the old Treyarch offices are really like dark and cramped and like kind of like doomer. They're just it's a
Yeah.
very like
Like
claustrophobic
from what
building.
level from little I've seen, it's a very like I noticed that like in the most recent stuff, they're in a very big building now. It's very open floor plan.
Yes,
It's
like
like
the
you
new
can look
Treyarch
over
is
like and see everyone.
big open room, bright, sunny,
Mm.
beautiful like murals on the wall. It looks like a great place to work in.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, like it looks
Absolutely. Yeah.
fantastic. But I had this thought. I was like this office could not make a Mob of the Dead, right? Just like
No.
it doesn't seem like that kind of environment to generate that kind of that feel of a
Yeah.
map. And I don't know if
And I
that
think
has
that's
anything
like
to do with
definitely
it, but
passing of the guard, like changing of the guard. Like it's just and you know there are still a lot of old people there. Craig is still there.
yeah.
You've got designers that were on recent like videos and advertisements saying that they've been there since Derice.
Hmm.
But yes, absolutely. I think the environment has changed. The playing field has changed. Um, I don't know if you're gonna cut. I don't know if you should cut this out or not. So I'll say it anyways. Though
No, go
the
ahead.
big thing being is that like you have the Ultimate's voice lines. Back in the day, they were very racy, very
They were a little bit
prejudiced.
edgy. Yeah,
They're a little
there's
edgy, but that was also part of the time though. They were very edgy, and you can see in Classify and Alpha Omega they sand down a lot of their edges. They're not as funny. They're not as memorable because Craig definitely reels their comedy back a bit in those
yeah,
maps.
you have look at those
Again,
like older lines and go, okay, let's tweak this a little bit for
yes.
BO4
And I
and
think
like
that's a good example to talk about like why things have changed. You know, it's why the characters aren't as funny. The characters are just simply not caricatures. They're not specific types of people. They're nuanced, they're evolved, but they can
yeah.
also be very boring. And that the writing can also just be
They
sometimes
they
really
they
bad.
made literal stereotypes for the original crew essentially. And
Yes.
I think we can shift a little bit to talk about story a bit. So
Mhm. Yes.
I'm not as well versed on like I know a fair bit about like this new Dark Ether storyline because I've gotten more interested in it with BO6. I wasn't really that into it when we just had like Cold War and Vanguard.
Yes, a lot of heavy lifting you'd have to do yourself to get involved in it.
Yeah, I did like go through some of the intel on Cold War, but I just wasn't feeling it as much. However, I
Mhm.
was a lot more interested in it when BO6 came out, and but what they've done with it so far has just not it's just not really been impressive. And
Yes.
I want to pick your brain a little bit to ask you why you think that is, because for one reason or another, it's not quite getting. Even though they opened up the floodgates and said, "Yo, chaos is canon." That's like the biggest like that's the crazy shit they could have done to
Yeah.
make this storyline interesting in a way that didn't. That was kind of the moment that I got interested in again, not because I was inherently in love with the chaos storyline, but because I'm like, this feels like old zombies where you think it's going one way and all of a sudden something insane happens that changes the whole trajectory. Like
Yeah.
that's the moment where I'm like, okay, this is kind of cool. But so far, I mean, especially with the tomb, I feel like they haven't actually like done anything. The tomb to me just narratively feels like we just need to go to this place to get the thing and go. Like
Hmm.
it's such like a little pit stop, not even like not a place to invest in and understand the world or anything. It's just in and out, get the thing and get out. And obviously the characters not having any lines at all is that doesn't help. So,
Yeah.
but you know a lot more about
So
the story, so I want you to take us through that a little bit.
yes. Well, real quick though, I will say the characters I did find out do have voice lines on this map, but they're not. They're very like they get mixed in with a lot of the overall voice lines that you hear on the other maps. They do have reactions to Archibald. They do have reactions to the Sentinel artifact. But yes, it is not very well done to the point where most people don't notice it.
Like as you're playing, you mean like when you
Yes, as you're playing.
sure,
Yeah.
okay, I see.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I guess I meant like not that they don't have any voice lines at all, but like particularly in the cutscenes, right when they're reaching for the
yes, there are no
Sentinel
voice
artifact,
lines. Yeah.
and they're just no one says a word. It's just like
which is weird. So my theory currently is that because of the strikes, they couldn't bring them in to record the CGI
yeah,
because in the beginning part where they grab Sentinel artifact, that's the only part that's done with in-game models. It's 3D, and then it cuts to them immediately in a MWZ polished cutscene with Sam talking.
Wait.
So I
But
wonder
even the part
if
like
part of
where they're about to board the helicopter, right? When they come out of
oh yeah,
the
that's all
thing.
done with in-game models. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
that's not pre-rendered. Yeah, and then the pre-rendered starts when Sam starts talking.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, well, real quick though, story. So here we are. We learn a lot about our characters, and by learn a lot, we learn almost nothing about them on Terminus. So we keep hoping that something happens. We learn on Terminus about the Sentinel artifact, which is something from the Chaos storyline. Whether or not everything that happened in Chaos is canon to Dark Ether, we currently don't know. My theory is that it is. In Terminus, we learn to go to Citadel, where we have to get the amulet. I'm really blanking on the name. It's the Obscurite something.
The
But
Obscura
basically,
Saltilium or something?
yes,
Something like that?
Ontilium, exactly. And that amulet will help us get into the Dark Ether, which will help us find the Sentinel artifact, which can be found at the dig site, which is the tomb, which is nearby Citadel. In it, we figure out we can get in by using the amulet, and we can find the artifact, which is what happens in the map. And there are plenty of story inconsistencies that happen in the way. For example, I'll bring up one right now. How did Archibald and his gang get into the tomb, and specifically into the Dark Ether, without the amulet? That was the whole reason why we went to Citadel. So why are we just able to go into, or why were they able to go into the Dark Ether? That shouldn't have been possible. Weird little inconsistency, and I don't know why they did that.
I saw you were saying something on Twitter about like the Sentinel artifact's power being inconsistent. Can you
yes,
open up a
too.
little bit about that? Because I'm kind of confused what you mean about that.
Yes, so a big thing about Chaos lore is that the Sentinel artifact is the only thing that houses Prim Materia. Prim Materia used to litter the Earth in the Chaos universe. It was considered a raw exo element that would basically can be used to do anything. It's kind of like 115.
Sure.
And the issue that they ran into was that one day it just started disappearing. So the Nine made Sentinel artifacts to house Prim Materia and their knowledge. They are called Sentinel artifacts, to quote Alistair. They are a vanguard. They are a sentinel. They are meant to protect the world from Prim Materia to people who aren't worthy to wield it, whatever of it is left. By obtaining Prim Materia, you gain knowledge and power that the Nine used to have. We don't know how exactly that works, but in Dead of the Night, for example, we can see that Prim Materia is refined into Alistair's Annihilator and the crazy effects that wonder weapon can do. In Dark Ether, however, in the tomb, we learn plenty of new things in the intel about Sentinel artifact. We learn that apparently the Sentinel artifact can think. It wasn't made by the Nine, it was made by Cortifex from Call of Duty Vanguard, who is a Dark Ether entity who is able to control the dead. Apparently, he made the Sentinel artifacts, that makes no sense. Also, what's weird is that the Sentinel artifact can attack people in the boss fight, which makes no sense as the artifact has been stated to not be able to attack, to defend itself, to have a thinking mind. Also in the intel, it is said that Archibald and his men feel like that they're being stalked by something. That is the artifact. Apparently, the artifact is actually draws people to it, which makes no sense because the artifact is supposed to keep things away. It's supposed to be hidden. It's calling people to it to sacrifice themselves to it, which again makes
is
no
completely
sense.
contradictory to what
Yes,
they have
to
it set up in
entire
BO4.
purpose. Yes,
That's interesting. So how do you reconcile with what you said earlier, where you think that the events of Chaos are canon with Dark Ether? Does that mean the Sentinel artifact is just a totally different entity than what we thought it was?
My issue is that it's the Odin artifact. It's the artifact from Voyage of Despair, which is the one used on that map. It's not a Dark Ether artifact. It's not a Sentinel artifact that's like one of the other gods. It's one that we've previously seen. They could have easily redesigned it, given it a different look, said that this one specifically does different things, but they didn't. They reused an old artifact to represent this. So I don't know why they did that. Because it poses extreme inconsistencies with it. Now, maybe they're going to reveal that not everything that happened in Chaos is canon to the storyline, but that seems confusing, and that's just going to confuse players, because in the final cutscene, the Sam AI even mentions that Sentinel artifacts go all the way back to being activated in ancient Egypt, which is 9. So why would you mention that exact detail, have Scarlet and
they have like
Shaw?
Alistair Rhodes you mentioned.
Alistair Rhodes is there, and he mentions Scarlet, and he mentions Shaw from the Chaos crew.
So it
weird.
is largely canon. It's just it is. From what you're saying, it's completely contradictory.
Yes, for some reason they did things that made no sense with the narrative, and I'm very confused why they did.
I see. Yeah,
maybe they'll answer us.
I mean, we can only hope, right? The problem I think I'm having narratively sometimes as well is that
yes.
I feel
Please
like
ask questions. I'd love to answer.
I feel like we don't get as much of And I mean, I guess this has been a problem since Cold War, but
Hmm.
one of the things that I really liked about old zombies was like in any given map, you might listen to a radio that has almost seemingly nothing to do with the map that you're in. It's this weird like pocket
Flavor
story.
text.
Yeah, yeah, and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah. Side plot. Yeah. Absolutely.
and I feel like we don't get a whole lot of that in Black Ops 6 maps. There are a lot of just, I mean, they're color commentary for the map, which is nice. It's like, I was listening to a lot of the radios for like Terminus and like, learning about like Patient 13 and stuff like that. That was pretty, like, it was pretty cool. Like if you have that context,
cool,
to kind of, it makes a lot more sense there. And they do a good job of like coloring the map with the intel and radios they have, but they're failing to like string along newer, cooler, not newer, cooler, but they're failing to string along like other interesting threads that I'm like, in the meantime, while this main thing is going on, I'm kind of interested in what's going on over here with this weird little like aside. That's how I initially got interested in the zombie storyline, like with Transit, and I was, like all of the weird stuff that's happening in that map. Like those TVs that you can activate by like having the power on and off at like certain times. And these like cries from Survivor, like that was the stuff.
Yeah, Survivors, like, Jackass Flats, The Flesh,
yeah, exactly.
All those little subplots.
Yes, that's kind of what got me hooked in the overall narrative, but it was those little things. I feel like we're missing a lot of that in Black Ops 6. It's always just color commentary to make up for the main like thing that's going on. I don't know if you feel a little differently on that way, but
no, I absolutely agree. I think the worst part is there are three very interesting subplots happening right now. One, his name is Edward Richtofen, and I'm surprised that they have not done a single thing with the bait that they've thrown in the Liberty Falls intro.
Yeah.
Where they just haven't done a single thing with him. No subplot, no radios detailing his adventure in the Dark Ether. Hopefully they land on their feet with that execution because they have done nothing to set it up so far. And I feel like that would engage a lot of people in it. The other one being Dr. Panos from Liberty Falls.
Liberty Falls, yeah. He just walks away and it's like, what is my guy doing? He walks away.
Maybe he's going to show up in the mansion, but again, you really got to land that landing with the mansion stuff because you have two subplots that could have very easily been answered in the map they were introduced or carried over to Terminus. Maybe you hear Richtofen in a Dark Ether area or even in the tomb. We go into the Dark Ether and you don't get to meet Richtofen. You don't get to hear from him. The crew doesn't get to reconcile their differences. They don't get to fight him. Nothing.
Man, I'm thinking about how kind of ridiculous it is that, like, at the end of Cold War, they literally end the game being like, yo, it's Richtofen, right? Like,
you guys are excited to see him.
Next game, Richtofen in next game. And then we get to next game, Richtofen in next game.
Like, yeah, and then he gets sucked into the Dark Ether. And
we're getting, like, strung along for, like, a whole other game that I thought by the time we landed foot in BO6, we'd be like, okay, like we're seeing what Richtofen's up to.
We hit the ground running.
Yeah, exactly. But they're really like delaying that. Also, when you were saying that, I find it really funny and interesting that the Liberty Falls intro is basically the intro cutscene for like the mansion, presumably the next map.
Yeah, like sure, it takes place. The incursion happens at the same time as Terminus, which is probably why they did that. But it absolutely is nothing. None of the events happen on that map.
Nothing to do with Liberty Falls. Nothing to do with it.
Yeah. So like I was talking to Milo about, or not Milo. Yeah, no, not before Milo. I was talking to someone after Milo's podcast when Liberty Falls came out, and it feels like when Panos put you in the Dark Ether, that should have been the halfway point of the map, and then the second half of the map is working your way with Richtofen to get out of the Dark Ether. But it's not picked up on at all.
We all thought, Liberty Falls when we saw the intro, we're like, we see this underground bit with Samantha, and we're like, yo, like we're gonna be able to go to this underground section of Liberty Falls. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way, but it seems like that's kind of what we'll probably do in the next map. I don't know. I feel like that intro was for the DLC 3 map, or for the mansion.
Yeah, which I don't know why they planned it like that. Maybe they thought that would pull in more audiences. Maybe that was a mandate.
Because you see Richtofen and you see Wonderwolf and you go, yo, I know that guy.
Yes, I know what that is. And so maybe the idea was that originally it was going to be Richtofen's like dream, and then it was going to cut to people like being infected in Liberty Falls, and it was going to be a different part of the cutscene. But then they kind of merged the ideas in boarding, and they just like put the two ideas together. We'll put Richtofen's beginning here, and we'll have him getting sucked into the Dark Ether. And then maybe they planned on bridging the gap more in Liberty Falls, but then maybe during development they just didn't.
They never really did. Do you? Okay, so this got me thinking about story as well. Do you think it's weird, or do you have like any problems with the fact that like obviously Black Ops 6 takes place after Cold War, but MWZ takes place like kind of far into the future, and we've already seen the crew like dead on that table around like the thing. Like,
Mhm.
does knowing the fate of them and potentially the fate of like Jensen and stuff like that, um,
Yeah.
does that
Ava, yeah.
does having that as like a bookend to some things in between, does that like spoil it for you at all, or do you
Not at all. Because this is zombies, and I think the last thing that they're going to do, hopefully, I've been proven wrong on Milo's podcast. Maybe I can be 0 for 2 on this one. I think that
let's hear it.
Ava's
What
gonna
does he got?
Ava's gonna pop out of a mirror, and she's going to be time traveled from the 80s or from modern day in Liberty, like all the way back to where Liberty Falls is, and she's going to have a direct impact on changing the future.
Mm.
I would again be shocked if they really did that, set all that up, showed you that they died so that you can get partially invested in BO6 just to know that their story ends terribly. I doubt that. I think that we have Richtofen coming back. This is the third iteration of this guy.
Yeah.
They won't let him die. I doubt they're going to let Weaver and the gang die that way.
Yeah, so I mean, I think
I would be disappointed if they did.
that's true. I mean, do you think the in the Liberty Falls cutscene, that's not the mansion cutscene? Do you think the Benadryl hat man in the mirror, like I've seen a lot of, do you think that's the Shadow Man?
The Shadow Smiths. Yeah, that's mentioned at the end of MWZ by the entity. They say the Shadow Smiths are looking for you, Ava. And
that's the one thread that's kind of like a
Mhm.
subplot or like a weird thing that's going on that I'm kind of interested in.
Yes.
Like, what do you make
Yeah.
of that? Do you think that is good? Oh my God, it's the Shadow Man, or do you think it's something totally different?
I think it's Monty and the Shaman merge. So during Togder Toten, the Apothicon Blood states that the duality is resolved. It's the Keepers and the Apothicons merging together to basically stop the multiverse.
Mhm.
And they help Nikolai by empowering the Agarthan device. And then he uses the summoning key as like a genie in a bottle to make a new universe.
Oh wow, man, that would be.
So
cool
I
if
think
they,
that when
like,
everything collapsed, that's when the two forces merge to survive. So you have like they're called the Shadow Smiths, but it's like the Keepers and the Apothicons merge together to keep going and sustain themselves.
That's an interesting theory. I would love for
Yeah.
that to be proven right. That would be cool. I would be into that.
Yeah. So real quick, another theory I've heard though too is that Prim Materia is actually, I'm gonna shout out my boy Coborium, is that Prim Materia is the broken down multiverse. It's why that in Chaos they state that Prim Materia has knowledge in it. Why would Prima Materia have knowledge in it? Because it's the broken down bits and atoms and pieces of the whole multiverse. Where else does it go? It breaks it down. It all got thrown to the dark ether. Some of it became black goop, which is the whole exo element.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a whole new element that completely terraforms the dark ether.
That's very interesting. I never
Yeah,
really actually thought about it that way. Huh.
No, I agree. It was brought up to me, and I was like, oh, that's a really good theory.
That's interesting. Hopefully, like there's a lot of, and see, here's the thing that's so beautiful about zombies storytelling as well was like Treyarch have literally like openly admitted this, that they were kind of making the story up to some degree as they went along, and they would take like community theories and stuff and take the bits that they like from it and make it official in the game.
Yeah.
I think part of to be clear, I'm pretty interested in like the Dark Ether storyline. I can't honestly say I'm as invested in this storyline as I was like original Ether. And I think for me, a lot of that reason is the old zombie storyline felt that like we were writing the story along with them, and that our speculation and our theorizing had a genuine impact on the outcome of of what was unfolding. And there was something really personal about that like I connected with.
Yeah.
And I do think this story is interesting, and it's certainly taken more twists and turns than I was anticipating in a good way. But it also feels like it's kind of like it's been written out for a while, and like we just got to get through the beats of this thing that we've already kind of planned out. And it's not quite as like I'm personally part of this thing, right? At least for me, that's maybe a little bit harder to connect to that way. But
no, I absolutely agree. Even someone who delved into Cold War fully, it's like reading a book, honestly. Whereas I think Old Zombies is more of like interactive media. I think Jason Blundell and Jamie Zielinski really played into that. They really played into player feedback and narrative and gameplay purposes. Where the modern era is more like they have a designated plan. They've been given parameters that they need to hit, and they're going to hit them no matter what way they have to.
Yeah, that is true.
And I think that's pretty telling in a lot of their directional choices, a lot of their writing choices, a lot of their gameplay choices. It's always like, we need to hit these benchmarks. And while there's still a lot of passion going into it, a lot of the game is directed by those benchmarks.
Right, exactly. They have to kind of like work their content around these big benchmarks and pillars that are already set in stone. So there's not this
Yeah.
wiggle room to like do this really cool like fan theory on a fly kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, if they executed well, I mean, I'm not going to complain. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. That's the execution's everything.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think for the rest of the year, right? Because we've gotten DLC 2 before January even ended. And my concern was that it is kind of what happened with MWZ a little bit, where like season 1 started really strong. And, you know, I obviously like kind of just, it was abandoned, it was forgotten about for the rest of the year. I don't think it's going to happen with BO6, but I mean, the rumors since the beginning have suggested like, you know, the 2 maps on launch plus 4 additional DLC maps, and we've gotten 2 of them already, and it's just now February. I don't see how they stretch another 2 maps all the way to like October or whenever the next game is.
Yeah.
I don't know if you think that there's a little bit, because again, those are just rumors and everything is subject to change. So do you think that there are more than 2 more maps for the rest of the year? Like if they're comfortable releasing these already, you think there's more coming?
100%. I don't think they would reveal the tomb on 115 day. I think that they had that plan at some point in their mind that they wanted to create smaller experiences. The idea of quantity over quality, which I think is telling. Where, if you ask me, I think Citadel and the tomb could have easily been merged into one map.
Ooh, interesting.
And you could have like the bottom half of the tomb under Citadel, and you could just make getting the Sentinel artifact one map. But I think that they had this idea of,
yeah, you're right.
I think they had this idea of, well, let's do a castle map. Oh, what if we did a tomb map? Well, we don't have the resources to go full in on the idea. Okay, or the manpower, or like just the direction, because they don't want to have too many ideas in Citadel. The map's too big at that point. So why don't we do like 75% manpower to Citadel, and then we'll do another 75% to the tomb, so we can do a full in like excavation map. We can do different tombs from different eras. It's not just like a knight's tomb. It's an Egyptian tomb. It's a Neolithic tomb, which is an era of history that they've never touched before. We can do like a Roman part of it. And they can pull all these different ideas, whereas if it was just under Citadel, it would be one theme. So maybe that was part of their idea, and maybe they want to do smaller experiences. You know, one map's a survival map, one map's a bigger map. That's something that we've been asking for a long time. The Ruka missile silos and Outbreak, people really wanted that as a survival map. So maybe this is what the tomb is. Again, a lot of this is subject to change. For all we know, we're halfway through the season in January, and that's it. We got 2 maps. Mansion's coming out in April, maybe.
Yeah.
And we got 1 map in the summer, and Zombies is dead for 6 months.
Right. I think that's actually very interesting that you said that the tomb and Citadel could have been 1 map. I think that's absolutely true. And I wonder if that was ever, you know, thought about at all. But
yeah,
it definitely is a quantity over quality approach. Not that the maps aren't quality. I actually think the maps are solid and they're built well. And they are formulaic, you know, I will say that. But I said that about BO3. I remember distinctly saying that I think BO3 maps are very formulaic, right? You go in, you do the quest, you do the boss fight, 3-phase, shoot the guy thing, get a perkaholic, you know, that's the map. But that's fine because I like that formula. And I would say the same thing about BO6.
It's all about execution on each map.
People go, dude, don't you get bored of like all the maps are the same? I'm like, they're not, but I get what you mean, like, as far as formula goes, but I'm okay with it because I think the formula is fun. Bro, I loaded up Vanguard today for a reason I'll disclose another time. But I loaded up Vanguard today, and I was playing Duran Fong, and I was bored in 2 minutes, bro. I'm like, this formula does not work for me. Like, it made me appreciate the design and gameplay of Black Ops 6 that much more because, like, it works, right? It is the formula, but it works. I think when people think about maps not having formulas, the only game to really point at is BO2 because you're kind of split right down the middle. You have what I'm going to call 2 Jimmy Zielinski maps, 1 David Vonderhaar map, and 2 Jason Blundell maps. So
wait, hold on. Which one was Vonderhaar?
A lot of people don't know this. Buried was David Vonderhaar's design.
I did not know that. I always call Barry Jimmy Zielinski's swan song.
Yeah, a lot of people give Zielinski the credit for Buried, but a lot of people don't know that was a Vonderhaar map, and So instead of having the duality of Jimmy and Jason maps in BO2, you kind of have a third one in the mix with Vonderhaar. So you have a huge variety in that game. But then BO3 tightened it up. It's got a formula. BO4 has a formula as well. And you can debate about which formula is better, but ultimately, if you like the formula, you'll probably like the whole game.
100%. Especially, I think BO4 Armor's case, where it eventually becomes in each map or each game where it's like you get the same gameplay loop on each map. It's just changing it up a little bit. Where it's like how you play BO4, like how you play a single BO4 map is how you pretty much play all of them with your main loadout. It's just different enemies and more weapons. Real quick though, I think adding on to David Vonderhaar, for the audience at home, for fun fact for those who don't know, Buried is the only map with no radios, and that makes a lot more sense considering Vonderhaar made that map.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about. Yeah, there are no radios. That is interesting.
That's why there's like 4 of them on TOG, because Blundell realized that he could just put a bunch of radios on TOG that are like gramophones. Because he can't just go back and add buried radios.
Yeah, right.
Jebediah Brown.
No, that's true. That is true. Yeah. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that Buried is a Zelensky map, but if you look at Buried as more of, okay, this is actually a Vonderhaar map, it kind of puts that map in context, because even Buried is pretty different to Transit and Dire Rise.
Transit and Dire is 100%. Yeah.
So
especially.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that means like every mind has a very different approach to making a zombies map. But I think that's what worked about BO2 for a lot of people.
Yes, it's very experimental. Everything does something different.
Absolutely. So,
and real quick, it's funny that you mentioned BO2 because we're getting the leaked documents that are coming out right now.
Yeah, I'm seeing those today.
Because of the builds. Yeah, allegedly, if it gets down on my computer, I wouldn't want to say if I had it or not. But allegedly, there's some really interesting stuff on there if it just happens to get on your computer.
Allegedly, there is
allegedly, yeah.
This is something that I was I've talked about this before. Like the original like concept of Buried, like the original map name, I believe was like Descent or Dissension or something. I think it was Descent, but the map was just completely dark.
It was just completely dark. It was. I mean, that map went through so many different phases. You got a part of it in New York, it used to be in New York City in the sewers. It was then changed to like a buried town where you had to use lanterns and generators, and then it was changed to like have more mineshaft parts. Then they added the underground western town part to it, and they added the maze, and then it.
It was crazy.
Go
ahead.
Yeah. No, same thing with Origins. Origins, like, its story was so radically different. It was supposed to take place with the dads of the Ultimus crew originally. And, like, Dempsey's dad was, like, Scottish.
That's so funny. I actually didn't know that. That's really funny.
Yeah.
The dads of the Ultimus crew, just like
everybody. You can cut this out. I can send you the file.
No, that's fine. I'll definitely check that out. It's like the Ultimus crew, like, beer bellies walking around. That'd be funny. I want to ask you your thoughts about the next game, given that I think we'll probably round out BO6 like on a pretty consistent note with what we have now. Like if you like Citadel and you like the Tomb, I think we're going to get maps to that par or around that quality. What are you expecting for? Oh, actually, before I get to that, I was thinking about this, and it kind of clicked for me when I was writing my script for my BO6 review. After Modern Warfare 2 came out, and the leaks were that like this was going to be the first game to have a premium DLC, right? And we're like, okay, this is groundbreaking for COD. We've never had a game and then just gets a year 2 expansion on that game. Obviously, they canceled that and they said, hey, we're just going to make this Modern Warfare 3 instead.
We had so many ideas. We're going to make this a whole new game.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. I'm like, that's a weird one-off probably. But then I was thinking about the fact that we're getting another Treyarch game this year. And I'm like, I think I figured out Activision's strategy. I think they're like double dipping games. I think they're, because, people were going, they would look at BO6 and go, Treyarch, what were you doing for 4 years, right? Not that BO6 doesn't have a lot to offer. I think it does. But like a lot of people were saying
two different games.
It's like they were probably building 2 games in that time. And Activision is like, whatever batch of content y'all have made, we're going to figure out how to divide it into 2 games over 2 years instead of just taking everything you made and compiling it in a single game. Because it would be more profitable to release 2 games instead of
with the same amount of manpower.
Everything into exactly.
Yeah.
So
you get 2 entire premium releases. You can do a whole new advertising campaign. Again, it's like it's like a new Fortnite chapter every year. You can refresh it every year.
Yeah.
And get new people on board.
Yeah.
Because A year is like what I found that developers and like executives like to consider, like, because everyone wants to have their new physical year bonuses
Mhm.
as they roll over. I mean, it's why COD comes out in beginning, like at the end of the year. They want
Yeah,
that like winter quarter 4 bump.
absolutely. So with Activision double dipping now on content
Hmm.
that's probably already made, I suspect that Black Ops 6 will probably be a lot like BO7 or whatever this game's going to be called. Like,
Yeah,
I don't see any radical zombies. It'll be different for sure in some ways. I
yeah.
guarantee it. But
They'll have
like,
little nuances. Yeah.
do you also think like BO7 zombies is going to be largely the same formula and maybe experience as what BO6 was, given that they were most likely developed around the same time?
Hmm.
And
So I
mhm,
mean, you brought up some very good set dressing facts. I hadn't even considered any of that until just now. You make very good points. With that in mind, yeah, maybe not. Maybe it will play very similarly. It'll just be like, oh, with the leaks of it being the premise crew returning. Oh, this time you're playing as like the premise crew going through like the dark ether or something on an open world map or like on a transit map or something. But
so you're expecting a similar
yeah.
formula, but different characters and
Yeah, different characters, different things that we know this time, and trying different things again. Because I've noticed Treyarch is, no matter what, very experimental in it. They never like to try the same thing twice.
sure, yeah, I would agree with
They're
that.
always pushing for new ideas.
One of the unfortunate aspects I think to the new COD engine, even though it does allow them to make content faster, which is great because again we have 4 maps and it's February right now. But
Hmm.
one of the downsides to that is that I feel like when I don't know, I'm thinking like the BO1 to like BO4 era of time where each studio had like a very different look and feel to their
Mm,
game. Um, one of the kind of unfortunate things is that they, I think, since maybe Cold War, even though Cold War was on its own engine, but like the games very much look and feel the same now. And
yes.
I do think they have to be careful to find ways to distinguish them despite them being made on like the exact same tech that everything else is made on, because I think that
Mhm.
also gives them not only opportunity to um try new things, but also like it gives it a certain distinction that I think a lot of people really fall in love with a particular game for a lot of nuanced reasons. The other thing, sorry, I'll let you respond to that in just a second. But
No, please, absolutely.
the other thing that I was talking to Pizza about last night was like we were doing myth busting, and one of the problems with trying to do myth busting on BO6, even though we have like a lot of cool gobblegums, is that the game is so ironed out. Like
Yes.
there's something
Yeah.
about the scuffed nature of the BO3 engine that was a little
Hmm.
bit kind of janky and broken sometimes, but allowed for
It was very
some
malleable.
very malleable, some very interesting interactions that could happen. Um,
Hmm.
but we don't really get that anymore because either glitches or these weird quirks have been really ironed out in the new COD engine. So it's hard to
Yeah.
do a lot of these kind of things where you're breaking the game. Like Treyarch, when we were at the
Yeah.
BO6 like pre-reveal, they were introducing gobblegums, and they were like, "These are our rule breakers that are supposed to make you feel like you're breaking the game." And I think that's great, but you're really not as with the new COD engine. Like everything is so ironed out that you
Yes.
don't get that creative ability to kind of push the engine to its limits a little bit. Which, in
Yeah.
my opinion, I think sometimes reduces a little bit of the creativity in zombies gameplay. I don't know
Mm.
what you think about all that.
No, I absolutely agree. A big thing about that I've noticed about old zombies is that old zombies was very characterized by every map felt completely distinct in what it wanted the player to do. In BO1 it was all about hazards and what you face. So every BO1 map introduces completely different hazards. Just the easiest example is the mini bosses on each map. Ascension was they take your perks. On 5 he takes your weapons. On Call of the Dead he takes up your ability to camp. On Shangri-La they take away your eyesight and you can make traps out of them. And on Moon they take away perks, excavators block off areas, and all of that jazz. Whereas in BO2, it was all about buildables. Every map had different buildables, different mechanics. BO3 was all about gobblegums, but you saw the slow homogenization of gameplay in BO3, but it still felt unique because the locations and ideas were so varied and wild.
Hmm.
BO4 was very similar. Cold War was when everything started hitting the fan. And to backtrack real quick on the COD HQ question, I despise COD HQ. I think it is a consistently buggy mess, but not in the fun way. Where
Yeah, right.
it feels like the things that break are things that are completely unintentional that just break the game entirely, or things that are just not intended to work properly. Usually, the answer to a cool myth is just, "Oh, it didn't work, and the game doesn't let you do this function anymore."
Yep, yep, yep. That
If it actually does have a cool interaction, by cool, it's just there's any interaction at all.
that is on the
But
money. Yeah.
yeah,
I
but
think
definitely with more modern COD, it's too ironed out in the wrong ways, where gameplay is not customizable, gameplay isn't unique to each map, so it's harder to play around with unique features.
Mhm.
Which is funny because they're really close to doing that right. I think the loadout system is great. They just need 10 times more things on each maps that make them feel unique. Like just special enemies, special abilities, special
or
ideas, like
hazards
not
again,
just
you know? Like
hazards. And then you just take all your loadouts, and then every loadout has a different way that it interacts with that now.
so
Like the biggest one being that on Origin Zombie Chronicles, if you use in plain sight, you are now invincible to the robot stepping on you. Just because of the hazard of the robot, in plain sight works distinctly with that compared to
mhm,
anything else in the
mhm,
game.
mhm. Or
And
and I'm
zombies just
thinking
doesn't have that.
and even like the golden helmet on BO2 for that
Yes, golden
specific
helmet.
thing is like
Yes, both.
that's a sandbox like solution to an in-map problem, which
Yes.
we don't have a whole lot of that in modern zombies, and maybe that has a
Mm.
lot to do with COD HQ and the ironed outness of
Yeah.
the system to some degree. Um,
Yeah, I mean, like so many problems in modern COD can literally be solved by pressing your bumpers and going to Aether Shroud because it's just
yeah,
so broken. You're invisible. You're invisible to all enemies. So some of their mechanics do catch all to too much stuff, and because it's so integrated into your basic loadout and mechanics, that's what causes less flexibility with map design, with character building,
mhm.
which is like they want you to character build, but some of the character build options are so strong it almost invalidates the other ones.
Yeah, yeah. There's always like people are going to to choose the meta that is the easiest route to success. Like that's just what
Yes.
we do. And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. But
Yeah,
uh,
that's just how it is. Yeah.
yeah, it's not their fault or anything.
I just noticed that like mechanic building and things that make maps unique has gone away just because they've changed that in favor of other things that make the experience different.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say something kind of. I'm gonna have my Stanley hot take here. I'm gonna say something maybe kind of
Go for it,
blasphemous.
please.
I'm definitely planning on talking about this a lot in my BO6 video. But kind of wrapping back to earlier in the conversation when I was talking about how like old zombies is like a tower defense like sandbox thing, survival
Mhm.
mode, and new zombies is like an action RPG sort of. I have been thinking about the fact that I feel like the mystery box is kind of a relic of the past at this point. Oh, we lost your cam.
No, you're good.
Oh,
Someone
there's
was
back.
asking me a
Okay.
question.
I was thinking about the fact that, like, I mean, with loadouts and with how BO6 plays, honestly, the mystery box is kind of outdated. Like, and I know that's
Yes.
blasphemous because the mystery box is COD Zombies. But I mean,
Mhm.
think about this in BO6 gameplay, right? Because what is the point of the mystery box in BO6? A lot of people would say, oh, you can get other guns to grind camos with or whatever. But it's like, would it really make a difference if the mystery box, instead of being random, was just like an armory that you could select from and you could get
Yeah, you
exactly the
pull it
gun you
out, yeah.
wanted?
Mhm.
And I'm not saying they should do that, but I'm saying like the whole idea of the mystery box in old zombies was like, oh shit, the thing I'm using is not working for the problem that I have. Let me hit the box and see if the thing it gives me does any better. Or maybe,
Yes.
that was the whole point of it. But
Yeah.
that's not really the point of it in BO6, I feel like.
Mhm.
Like the mystery
A
box
big
itself was kind of
Yeah.
outdated. It'd be blasphemous
Mhm.
to get rid of it, but like do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. A big issue is that the mystery box is outdated because like newer mechanics are simply saying, "Oh, is your weapon not good? Well, just upgrade it in the armory, pack a punch it, do anything pretty much but hit the box." Due to how big investment is nowadays,
Mhm.
where you need 50,000 points and 9,500 salvage to get a weapon up to maximum level. Whereas if you hit the box, it only on a later round will it be maybe the same rarity or higher.
Mhm.
Or like you still need that 50,000 point investment. Why would you trade out your double pap shotgun where if you like hit the box you will now be using a zero pap shotgun,
Yeah.
and due to how damage scale
Oh, I
works in
hope you have
BO6,
50k points to fully
yes,
upgrade it,
50,000 to basically catch back up to the undead health, which is possible, but especially with ammo boxes, but it's so much more work that's required where the game feels antithetical to you trying to do that. It just wants you to upgrade your loadout weapon.
Mhm. The
and
mystery box
maybe
is
you have
the
enough points.
biggest point
Yeah.
trap in the game, and it's like it's kind of an
Yes.
outdated. But so what do you do about that? Like
Mhm.
I'm not
I don't
expecting
know
you to
because
have
I
the
don't
answer,
say
but I'm like, what do you do about that?
yeah, which is I think that's a problem that they've faced with too. Because I wouldn't want to say get rid of it because it's a zombie's personality thing. It would be taking away another thing that makes zombies special by getting rid of it. It's just the game isn't built to utilize it to its fullest potential anymore,
Mhm.
and that definitely has gone away with the whole survival management of the game, resource management. Where it's like I think it started happening in BO4, where BO4 was always just I would use my strife, get the wonder weapon, and then that was pretty much my main gameplay loop. Call it a day from there because you could just build a wonder weapon on
Right.
every map in BO4.
And not to
And
mention
yeah,
in BO6, like, you know, to your point that it's not really a resource survival mode anymore. There are ammo boxes everywhere. Like
everywhere.
every 10 steps, there's another ammo box. Like
Every room has one. I found out. When you are basically no more than one room away from an ammo box.
that's wild.
You just need to like look in the room that you're currently in. That's the way they want you to look for them. Is that
Mm.
which is weird. They didn't redesign them to look more zombies. Like they're just
They're just the
Warzone
Warzone
ammo
ammo
boxes,
boxes. Yeah.
which still kind of annoys me. It's one of the things that I was surprised from Cold War they kept the design
Even if
of
they had just like an
and didn't
open
change.
wooden crate with like like
Yes, and it has the
LMG
mystery
like
box
belt
logo
bullets or
on it.
something, or
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like just something. But
Or
yeah,
even there's like a max ammo machine. Like it just has a massive max ammo on the top of it. Like talks to you.
right. Man, that is a good
Again,
point.
like things that like zombies, like that's how it can lose part of its personality by trying to make it easy for players to understand on the first go. It loses that personality that it could have had.
Sure.
That makes the mode unique.
Sure.
So, like, oh, what's the last game that I thought really let me use the mystery box? Even BO3, I would say was an issue where I would just get the HVK or the KRM and I would just get a wonder weapon.
Mm-hmm. And the other
That was
issue with BO3 was that you would just get an alternate ammo type on your weapon, and that would
yes,
be
and
like
that
every gun
completely
was
null
the
and
same
void
then.
it.
Yeah.
And then on BO4, I mean, BO4 you kind of hit the box. That's because every weapon sucks besides the wonder weapon.
Besides
Even
a wonder
then,
weapon
you
and
have-
or a specialist.
and yes, specialist, which is so overpowered.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know what to do about the mystery box problem either, but that's something I've been
Neither
like
do
thinking about a ton
I.
because I want the mystery
it's
box to be
interesting.
cool again, and I want it
I
to.
agree.
It actually feels like a detriment to the game. Like it's
Yes.
such like a temptation.
You get so trapped into it.
Yeah, but it almost
Where
never
it's like,
pays
why would
off.
I hit? Yeah, like why would I hit the box when my ASG or my GS45 are 10 times more effective and the GS45 is a wall up and on the first 3 maps it's on?
Mm-hmm. And you could say, oh, the mystery box is to get the ray gun, but it's like, dude, in the tomb, there's a guaranteed way to get a ray gun anyways. Like they
Every
have a
time,
quest
yeah.
for it, so it's like
You have a quest for it. The Sam Trials give it to you. Wonder Bar gives it to you like 90% of the time. You get it through the main quest. You get it through like other methods.
yeah,
Like I was thinking about it. I think a ray gun is what they want you to evolve your weaponry into in BO6
which is kind of crazy because like
because of how many different ways there is. Like they want the ray gun to be like your final destination between like a normal weapon, the map's unique wonder weapon, and like that's the middle point is the ray gun.
that's an interesting thought. Huh.
Yeah.
I didn't think about it that way. That's very curious.
Because on Cold War they don't want you getting it at all.
No,
But
they
on
do not.
BO6 they do want you getting it. In fact, it's the wonder weapon that you actually probably see the most, especially if you play on co-op.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that.
Yeah.
So one last thing I'll ask you before we start to wrap up here. I want to ask you just a real quick, like what are your top 5 favorite maps of all time and why?
Oh, hold on. I got to pull up my tier list for this. I'm pretty sure I know it off the top of my head, but let me just make sure. Because
We got the
is
Stanley
very
tier list right here, Chad. This is the first time
Yes,
it's ever
my-
been heard by the internet.
my top 5 is Voyage of Despair, 9, Zombies in Spaceland, Horizon Drock, and Ancient Evil. Shadows is like a
Wow.
number 6.
Very
I know a lot of people ask
BO4.
where Shadows is.
Very BO4. Okay, so
Yeah.
no, I mean, Spaceland kind of based. Like that's a good pick. I think man, I was actually playing the boss fights on that on IW the other
boss
day.
fight mode, yeah.
I love the boss fights on IW. They're all fantastic.
Yeah. They're all really good, yeah.
Voyage of Despair is your favorite map ever.
I love it. It's a map that it has a lot of flaws on it, but whenever I get into it, whenever I get engrossed in the world of it, just the trial, the music, the atmosphere, the planet step, I love the Kraken. The
Mhm.
Kraken is my favorite wonder weapon. I love that concept.
Wow.
The triple barrel cannon, I think it looks really cool. I really get engrossed in the chaos characters. I like them a lot on the map, despite what a lot of people say. I think the lore is super interesting. I think the environment is super cool. There are a lot of flaws, though. They don't utilize the Titanic or the Norse mythology to any advantage. It just feels like zombies on the Titanic, and they didn't really feel like designing the rest of the narrative around that.
Mm-hmm.
They just came up with the punchline, and that's it.
Yeah. So out of curiosity, where do you put Shadows of Evil then?
No, number 6, like right after
Okay.
top 5.
I was actually
Yes.
wondering that.
It's
No,
just a
that's
map
fair.
that I've just kind of slowly fallen out of love with, just because I think that there are other maps with just snappier gameplay. Where I think of like Shadows, where if you want to do PAP, it is a like 10-minute process every single time I want to play the map.
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
It's a good process, but it's just a lot that I find that like other maps I just personally find more fun.
No, I mean that I think that's a respectable top 5. I think a lot. I'll be curious what y'all in the comments have to say about that. If
this will be the
you
next
agree
Weaver
with this top 5,
argument.
this will be the next Weaver Richtofen. Right, it's going crazy on Twitter right now as we speak. Twitter's outside your door right now. But no, man, I was thank you for coming on and talking about Actually, last thing I want to ask you is what are your wishes and hopes for the rest of BO6? Like, is there anything specific you want to see this year?
I hope the Jenga tower of the narrative that it has set up will be resolved in a interesting way that makes it all satisfying, because currently you've got Aether, Dark Aether, and Chaos, and they are all stacking on top of each other, and the tower is slowly shaking. So I hope that they're able to remedy it, build a better foundation to the last couple of maps, and really figure out what the narrative wants to be.
You're looking for a really satisfying like story conclusion. Maybe not even conclusion, because obviously it's going to continue, but
I mean,
something
just that makes all the hardship worth it.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair. I kind of agree with you, to be honest. Like, I want them to give me enough of a payoff where I'm like, okay, my investment into, I mean, even MWZ and Cold War and BO6 is worth it. And if they nail it here, I will be a lot more interested going into the next game as well. I completely agree.
Absolutely.
But yeah, listen, thank you guys so much for watching. Sadly, Tyler could not make it today, but he will be on the next show with us. Just had to take this one over, but I appreciate Stanley coming on. Thank you so much for your time, man, and coming on to join us today.
Yeah, please, my pleasure.
And y'all watching at home, if you haven't left a like on the YouTube video, I would appreciate that. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a review, or on Apple, you can do the exact same thing over there. We appreciate y'all's support over, like, Spotify has been going wild, and the YouTube channel has been doing really good as well. So thank you guys for that. We will have a lot more guests on coming soon, and make sure y'all check out Stanley as well. We'll have him linked down below. And anything else you want to wrap it off with?
Not much. Thank you all for watching, and remember, keep on slaying.
There it is. All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.